The kitchen at Clayton's Roadhouse roared like a steel furnace in the middle of a summer storm. Fryers hissed, orders piled up like fallen dominoes, and the whole staff moved in frantic loops under the shouts of waitresses and the crack of metal pans. The restaurant was always busy at noon, but today felt like some chaotic fever dream. Like every truck driver, every soccer mom, every traveling salesman in the county decided to eat at the same time. But in the very back corner, half hidden behind a dangling rack of pots, stood a woman who never seemed part of the chaos. Avery West. To most, she was background scenery, quiet, contained, rhythms so precise they almost hypnotized. While others cursed and shoved and scrambled, Avery moved with this calm, synchronized grace that didn't belong in a greasy American roadhouse kitchen. She sliced onions with straight, perfect cuts, each one identical like it came from a machine. She carried trays with efficiency, cleaned as she went, made no noise, wasted no movement. Even her breathing seemed quieter than everyone else. The new servers whispered about her sometimes. Is she mute? Does she ever smile? I swear she doesn't blink, dude. She's nice, just weird. But Avery didn't mind. Quiet was what she wanted, needed. In a world that constantly demanded noise, Avery built herself a life where silence was armor. Behind her, the new manager, Brock Mallory, a loud, overconfident ex-college athlete with a permanently sour expression, slammed a broken fryer onto the prep table like he was dropping a body. Avery, he barked. Fix this again. The other cooks froze, exchanging looks. Avery wiped her hands calmly. Of course. Brock smirked. Knew you'd say yes, you always do. She crouched beside the fryer, sleeves sliding up as she reached for the toolbox. And that's when one of the new line cooks, Tyler, barely 20, too nosy for his own good, caught a glimpse of ink on her forearm. Yo, Avery, he laughed, leaning in, that a tattoo. Didn't peg you for the type. Avery's spine stiffened. She pulled the sleeve down instantly. Tyler raised his eyebrows. What is that, like a bird? A dragon, military, maybe. Avery didn't answer. She just adjusted her sleeve and returned to the fryer. But her eyes changed. A flicker, so fast anyone else would have missed it. Fear. Tyler shrugged and wandered off, grumbling about the heat. But Avery wasn't listening. That tiny exposed curve of her tattoo wasn't just any ink. It wasn't decorative. It wasn't sentimental. It was classification coded. Something she should have removed years ago. Something she hoped nobody in this small town would ever recognize. Avery forced the thoughts away and focused on the fryer. She needed normal. She needed routine. A loud crash outside the kitchen made everyone jump. The front door slammed against the wall so hard that several waitresses gasped. Avery didn't lift her head at first. Restaurants had loud customers all the time, probably just some rancher having a bad day. But then she heard a voice. Low, clear. Too familiar. And her body froze, completely froze, before her mind even processed why. A table for one, the man said to the host. Avery's hands began to tremble, her pulse spiked. That voice did not belong in this world she'd created. Not in this kitchen. Not in this quiet little town. She straightened very slowly, as if afraid the movement itself might draw attention. Her heart hammered. Don't look. Don't turn. Don't. But she did. She peeked around the corner. And her breath stopped. Cole Maddox. Older now, broader shoulders, beard thicker, eyes darker somehow, but she would have known him anywhere. Because Cole Maddox wasn't part of her old life. He was the reason she'd buried it. She instinctively stepped back, knocking a metal spoon to the floor. It clattered loudly. A few cooks glanced at her in surprise. Avery never made noise. Cole scanned the restaurant, slow and deliberate, like he wasn't looking for a table, like he was looking for someone. She ducked behind the rack of pans, pulse racing in her ears. He can't be here. He can't have found me. Not after all this time. Not after the new name, the relocation, the years of living like a ghost. But when she dared to peek again, Cole's eyes were pointed straight at the kitchen. Straight at her. He didn't move. Didn't smile. Didn't blink. Just watched. Avery stumbled backward, breath stuck in her throat. It felt like the floor tilted under her feet. The fryer behind her hissed loudly, startling her out of her daze. Brock stormed over, annoyed. Avery, quit staring into space. Get that fryer done or you're staying late. She didn't react. Couldn't. Her fingers shook as she reached for her phone under the apron. She didn't know what she planned to do, call who. There was nobody left from her old unit, no one alive she trusted, no one who knew the person she became after. A shout snapped her head up. Hey, where'd that guy go? Tyler leaned out of the kitchen window toward the dining area. The scary dude, he was right there. Avery turned slowly. Cole was gone. Vanished. As if he'd never been there. Her heartbeat slammed against her ribs. Men like Cole didn't just show up. And they definitely didn't visit. They hunted. Avery rushed to the back door, breath shallow. She pushed it open. And froze. There, scratched into the metal door at knee level, was a symbol. Small, precise, impossible for anyone else to understand. A circle. A line slashed through it. 2 wings spread outward. Her tattoo. Her unit. Her past. A message carved for her. Avery stepped back, the color draining from her face. Not after all these years. Not after everything she'd done to disappear. Brock called from behind her, irritated. Avery, Order 5, stop staring like you've seen a ghost. But she had. Not a ghost. A warning. An activation. Something she prayed would never come. Avery slid the back door shut with shaking hands. Every instinct screamed at her. Run. Hide. Prepare. But she knew it wouldn't matter. Because the second she saw that symbol, she understood something she never wanted to face. Her quiet life was over. And the man she tried so hard to escape was already inside her world again. And somewhere in the restaurant, unseen, Cole Maddox was still watching her. The lunch crowd roared on, oblivious to the storm brewing in the back kitchen. Avery West kept her hands busy, slicing, stirring, plating, but her mind was elsewhere, racing through memories she had fought for years to bury. Cole Maddox had found her, somehow, and he wasn't just any visitor, he was a ghost she had tried to leave behind. Avery froze mid-motion, knife hovering over a cutting board. Her pulse thundered in her ears. Every instinct screamed to run, to disappear, but the kitchen was a cage. She couldn't escape without being noticed. The restaurant's front door opened again, more deliberately this time. The air shifted, a faint scent of leather and something metallic, coal. She didn't look, she didn't dare. Instead, she reached for the phone hidden beneath her apron. Her fingers were trembling, slick with sweat and grease. She hesitated. Should she call the police? No, Cole wasn't just any stranger. He was dangerous, but more importantly, she knew him. And she had survived because she understood men like him. A voice cut through her thoughts. Excuse me, do you work here? It was soft, calculated, the kind of voice that slid under your skin and left a trace of unease. Avery's heart skipped. She peeked over the counter, and there he was. Cole Maddox. Older, broader. His beard had grown in the last few years, but the sharpness in his eyes hadn't dulled. If anything, it was worse. He carried himself like a predator who had already assessed every angle, every exit, every potential threat. Avery's breath caught in her throat. She had seen him move like that before, years ago in the desert under blazing sun, under gunfire. He was lethal. And now he was here in her quiet town, in her kitchen. Brock, oblivious as ever, came barreling past her with a tray of orders. "Hey, what's taking so long?" he barked. "We've got tables waiting." Avery's gaze snapped back to Cole. He wasn't reacting to Brock. He barely seemed to notice him. His eyes were locked on her, and for the first time in years, she felt something she thought she'd never feel again: fear. Cole Maddox didn't just walk into her life. He brought it all back. The missions, the danger, the decisions she had tried to forget. He reminded her of who she really was and of who she could become. "Cole," she whispered under her breath, though she wasn't sure if anyone could hear her. He tilted his head slightly, a ghost of a smirk crossing his face. It wasn't friendly. It wasn't kind. It was warning. Avery realized, in that instant, that he had come for her. And then Brock noticed. "Hey, who's that guy?" Brock asked, approaching. "I don't like the way he's staring at you." Cole's gaze never wavered. He said nothing, just walked closer to the kitchen doorway. Avery froze. She could feel every ounce of her training come alive, muscles remembering years of discipline, reflexes she had tried to bury. Tyler, the young line cook, nudged her elbow. Avery, you okay?" She nodded, too fast, too stiff. Her mind was calculating. Exits, obstacles, the distance to the phone, the potential for confrontation. But before she could act, Cole moved. Not toward her, but past the kitchen door into the dining area. Gone. Avery's pulse raced. He had vanished into plain sight, and that's when she noticed the small detail that set her stomach in knots: the symbol, carved subtly into the corner of the wooden frame near the door, a mark that matched her tattoo perfectly. It was deliberate. A message. A warning. Avery felt a cold dread settle over her chest. Someone had found her, and they were telling her without words that her past wasn't done with her yet. She wiped her hands on her apron, trying to regain composure, but her mind raced through every possible scenario. Cole Maddox wasn't here by accident. He wasn't a random customer. He never was. She remembered the last time they had faced each other. Desert sand burning underfoot, heat rising in waves from metal, blood on her hands, and Cole standing over the line between life and death. He had been her partner once, trusted, respected, loyal, until he was. He had gone rogue, disappeared with classified intel, and rumors said he had joined a paramilitary network. Dangerous, unpredictable, deadly. And now he was back. Avery's eyes flicked to the back door. She could run, but running would do nothing, not from him, not from what he represented. She looked around. The kitchen staff were distracted, Brock arguing with a server about missed orders, Tyler gawking at the empty doorway. Nobody noticed the tension that gripped her. That was good. That was necessary. Avery's training kicked in. She moved quietly, repositioning herself near the prep counter. Her hands grazed the edge of a knife, but she didn't draw it. Not yet. She didn't know if he was the threat or if he had come to warn her. She needed information, fast. Her eyes scanned the restaurant, every exit, every potential danger point, every person. And then she saw movement at the back window. Cole watching her again. A chill ran down her spine. It wasn't just that he had found her. It was that he wanted something, something she couldn't yet identify, something she feared. The lunch rush blurred around her, the noise of the kitchen fading as her focus narrowed to him. She couldn't let anyone see her panic. Not Brock, not Tyler, not the customers, but her hands shook, betraying her calm exterior. She forced herself to breathe slowly, in, out, in, out. And then, as if sensing her hesitation, Cole lifted a finger, subtle, almost imperceptible, and tapped the side of his temple. A signal. A reminder of who he was, of what she once was, of the world she had escaped. Avery's mind reeled. The quiet chef, the unremarkable woman no one noticed, that was a lie, a disguise. Her pulse quickened, fear was gone, replaced by something else. Preparation. She moved to the back door again, pretending to check a supply closet. Her heart pounded as her fingers grazed the doorknob. Outside, the alley was quiet, too quiet. She glanced back. Cole was gone again. Her stomach knotted. He was everywhere and nowhere at the same time. Avery's lips pressed into a thin line. The calm mask returned, but inside the storm was building. Someone who knew her, someone who remembered her, had crossed oceans, had tracked her life, had found her here. And she knew, deep in the marrow of her bones, that the quiet life she had built was over. Cole Maddox had come back into her world. And Avery West would have to decide, fast, if she was going to face him. Or run. Neither option felt safe. And as the lunch rush intensified, Avery felt the eyes on her again, just for a moment, a flicker in the corner of the kitchen. Cole watching, waiting. And she realized with icy clarity that whatever came next, it would not be simple, not civilian life, not cooking, not silence. Avery took a deep breath and wiped her hands on her apron. The quiet chef was no longer quiet. Because the storm had arrived, and she was in the eye of it. That night, Avery sat alone in her tiny apartment above Clayton's roadhouse, the hum of neon signs outside casting jagged shadows across the walls. The quiet that once felt like refuge now pressed down on her chest like a physical weight. Every nerve in her body was alert, every muscle wound tight. She could still feel him, the predator's gaze, sharp and cold like a knife against her spine. She opened the lockbox she had sworn she'd never touch again. Its metal was cold under her fingertips, familiar yet forbidding, like a doorway she had sealed but never locked. Inside lay relics of a life she had tried desperately to leave behind. A military ID, blacked out and classified, her name stamped in letters she no longer answered to. A medal tarnished with time that she had never felt she truly earned. A disassembled sidearm, illegal for civilians, yet once an extension of her body. And a faded photograph, her old special operations team. Her eyes lingered on the photo. Each face held a story of loyalty, sacrifice, and survival. And there, in the center, was Cole Maddox, grinning like a fool before the world had turned him into something else. She traced the edges of the photograph with a finger trembling. Memories flooded her, the desert sun scorching her skin, sand under her boots, the weight of life and death decisions pressing down, the screams she had tried to erase. Cole had been a partner once, someone she trusted with her life, until he broke that trust. He went rogue, stole intel, disappeared into the shadows. Avery thought she'd escaped him, thought she had escaped that world. But tonight she knew better. She reassembled her firearm with hands that moved with terrifying precision. Each click, each snap, each motion was second nature. The apartment filled with the soft rhythm of a machine at work, and Avery felt the familiar, cold comfort of control. She didn't want this. She never wanted this. She wanted quiet kitchens, routine, a life where danger meant burning herself on a skillet. She had worked hard for this peace, but peace, she realized, was a lie, not anymore. A sharp knock at the door made her start. 1, 2, 3 deliberate knocks, a pause, then 2 more. Her pulse spiked. Her first instinct, run. Her second instinct, grab her weapon. Her third instinct, freeze. The knock was coded. She recognized it instantly, signals from her old unit, but she wasn't in her old unit. She was supposed to be a civilian. She wasn't supposed to answer. She moved silently, fingers brushing the edge of the door. "Who is it?" she called, voice steady. "Open up, Avery," a familiar voice said, calm, measured, professional, controlled. Her stomach dropped. "Cole." She slid the door open a crack, just enough to see his face inches away. The expression on his face was almost human, almost gentle, and for a moment the years melted away. But only for a heartbeat. She slammed the door. But his boot jammed it, hard. Avery staggered backward, heart racing. He was stronger, more imposing than she remembered. His eyes searched hers, trying to read every thought, every fear, every hesitation. "Avery," he said softly, almost pleading, "we need to talk." Her mind raced. Why was he here? What did he want? She could feel it in the tension radiating off him. He wasn't here to reminisce. Before she could respond, a new sound cut through the tension, a faint click behind him. She froze. Not Cole. Someone else. A gun suppressed, trained, waiting. Avery's instincts kicked in. Every muscle, every reflex she had honed in war years ago sprang to life. She dove sideways, the door slamming behind her as the first shot cracked through the room. Sparks flew where the bullet hit metal. Dust and debris rained down. Cole moved instantly, tackling the man behind him. The second shot rang out, missing him by inches. Avery's stomach dropped. She rolled toward the kitchen counter, grabbing a cast-iron skillet and hurling it with every ounce of strength she had. It hit the attacker's wrist with a sickening crack, forcing him to drop the gun. Cole twisted, his movements precise and brutal. The two men collided with a wall, grunting and crashing into each other. Avery's heart pounded. She had survived ambushes before, but never like this. Never with civilians, never with her new life at stake. The intruder struggled, his eyes wild. He wasn't just an assassin, he was trained, efficient, calm under pressure. But Cole, he had been like this once too. And for a brief second, Avery felt a pang of old trust. She lunged for her own weapon, the suppressed pistol she had kept hidden under the counter. But the man spun, kicking her hard in the ribs. Pain shot through her body. She fell to the floor, gasping. Cole gripped the attacker's throat with terrifying strength. "Who sent you?" he roared. The man only smiled, and then a soft, high-pitched beep echoed through the room. A timer. Avery's eyes widened. She didn't have to think to know it was a bomb, a microcharge. Not enough to kill them immediately, but enough to blind, enough to disorient, enough to tip the scales. "Cole, move," she screamed. He dove toward her, reaching out, but the explosion of light and sound knocked them both to the floor. Dust filled the air. Sparks rained from the ceiling. Her ears rang. When she finally blinked the smoke away, Cole was gone. Disappeared. And in the debris of her apartment, Avery realized with a sickening certainty. He hadn't come to warn her. He had come to draw her back into the life she thought she'd left behind. And it wasn't just him. Someone or some organization was targeting her. Avery climbed to her feet, shaking but determined. She gathered herself, checked the windows and doors. Nothing. No trace of Cole, no trace of the attacker. Only the faint smell of smoke and fear lingering in the air. Her phone buzzed, cutting through the tension. Unknown number. One message. "They're coming for you too." Her stomach turned. She had thought her days of being hunted were over. She had been wrong. Avery's hand rested on the pistol at her hip. She had no choice now. Not to run, not to hide. The quiet life she had built, the life of the unnoticed chef, was over. She looked around her apartment. Dust in the corners, broken glass on the floor, shadows of what had just occurred stretched across the walls. Her past had returned, unbidden, unrelenting, and it had brought with it the weight of everything she had tried to forget. Avery clenched her jaw, breathing hard. She wasn't the woman she had been before. That woman had survived deserts, firefights, betrayals. That woman had been lethal. Avery West, the quiet chef, had a choice. And she knew, deep down, that the only way forward was through fire. Because someone was coming for her, and she had no intention of being easy prey. The sound of the blast still reverberated in Avery's ears. Smoke and dust clung to her hair, her skin, her clothes. The quiet apartment she had cherished, the fragile peace she had built over years of running, was gone in a heartbeat. And though she was gasping for air, adrenaline pushed every other sensation to the background. She blinked through the haze and saw Cole crawling toward her. His movements were precise, fluid, honed from years she had spent with him in far worse situations than this. But he was slowed, his arm grazed, maybe even hit by the microcharge. Blood trickled down the side of his face. Avery's stomach dropped. For a moment, panic rose in her chest, but she pushed it down, shoved it into the corner where she could harness it. Fear was a tool. She had learned long ago to make fear work for her. She dragged herself to her feet, scanning the apartment with trained eyes. Every object could be a weapon, every shadow a hiding spot. And then she saw him, the second intruder. Calm, methodical, crouched behind the overturned sofa, gun trained directly at her. Avery's pulse spiked. She dove behind the kitchen counter, seizing a heavy cast-iron skillet. Her hands shook, but only slightly. Years of training had taught her that trembling muscles could still kill if used correctly. "Stand down," she shouted, voice steady. "I don't want to hurt you." The intruder didn't flinch, didn't move, just stared, professional, deadly, silent. Cole groaned behind her. "Get him, Avery, go." She twisted, aiming the skillet like a makeshift club, and hurled it with all her strength. The metal clanged against the intruder's gun hand, forcing him to flinch. Sparks flew. The bullet meant for her clanged against the wall. Cole lunged, tackling the intruder. They crashed into a wall, the sound of bones and metal colliding reverberating through the apartment. Avery ducked instinctively, heart pounding. Every instinct screamed at her, "Move, fire, survive." She grabbed the pistol she had kept hidden under the counter, the one she had never wanted to use. But it was time. There was no other choice. Another shot rang out. Avery fired, precise, careful. The intruder's leg buckled. He didn't scream, he didn't have time, he wasn't supposed to. Cole pinned the first attacker, twisting him expertly to the floor. "Who sent you?" he demanded, voice sharp, unyielding. The intruder smiled. Avery's stomach dropped. That smile wasn't human, it was practiced, cold, calculated. Then the beep came. A soft, high-pitched, unrelenting beep. A timer. Her heart sank. Microcharge. Enough to blind, disorient, maybe even collapse the floor. Not enough to kill instantly, but enough to make them all vulnerable. "Cole," she screamed, adrenaline and terror mixing in a bitter cocktail. He looked at her, eyes wide. "Move." She lunged toward him, grabbing his arm, but the explosion hit before they could escape. Blinding light, ear-splitting crack, dust and smoke filled the apartment. The floor vibrated violently beneath them. The world seemed to tilt sideways. Avery slammed herself against the wall, protecting herself instinctively. The smell of burnt metal and ozone filled her lungs. When she blinked, disoriented, she couldn't find Cole. Panic rose like a tidal wave. "Cole!" she screamed, but only the echo of her own voice returned. Coughing, choking, she pushed through the debris. Broken glass crunched beneath her boots. Smoke stung her eyes. The apartment, her apartment, was unrecognizable. Then she saw movement in the corner of her vision. Cole crawling, bruised, bleeding, but alive. Avery ran to him. His breathing was ragged, shallow. He grabbed her wrist with surprising strength. "You need to get out," he rasped. "No," she snapped. "We stick together, we survive together." His gaze softened for a fraction of a second. "No, not this time. You're the only one who can stop what's coming." Avery froze. "What do you mean?" she demanded. Cole shook his head, pain and urgency in his eyes. "I can't explain now. You have to trust me. Run, live, fight back." Before she could argue, another movement caught her eye. Shadows near the shattered window, a glint of metal in the dim light. Another attacker. Avery's stomach turned. Her calm mask snapped. Her fingers went to the pistol. Cole dragged her behind the kitchen counter again. Bullets shredded the air around them. The intruder she had incapacitated was stirring. She could hear the mechanical click of his gun, trying to chamber another round. Her mind raced. Options flashed like lightning. She could fight, but that would leave Cole exposed. She could run, but then Cole would face them alone. She could surrender, but surrender meant death. The intruder approached, gun raised. Avery felt time slow. Every motion became distinct. The way his boot tapped the floor, the way his hand twitched near the trigger, the subtle bend of his spine. She made the choice. Avery lunged forward, firing 2 precise shots. The first missed but grazed the attacker's shoulder, making him stumble. The second struck true, disarming him completely. He collapsed, groaning, hands clutching his injured arm. Cole grunted, pushing the first intruder away. They were temporarily safe. Avery leaned back against the counter, panting, sweat and blood running down her face. Her mind was a storm of thoughts, adrenaline and fear. Cole looked at her, pain etched into his features. "They're not done," he said simply. Avery's pulse thudded. She understood immediately. Whoever had sent these men knew exactly who she was, where she lived, and what she could do. Her quiet life, her safe life was over. She had no choice. Cole pulled her close, whispering urgently, "Get your things, move fast, they'll try again." Avery didn't argue. She grabbed her small backpack, stuffing in the essentials, phone, wallet, a spare knife. Her hands shook, but her mind was focused. Every movement precise, every breath controlled. The intruders weren't finished. She could feel it. The sound of distant engines, the faint crunch of tires on gravel outside. Reinforcements. Cole's gaze met hers. Ready. She nodded. They bolted for the back alley, ducking behind dumpsters and trash bins as shadows moved toward them. Bullets pinged off metal. Avery's heart pounded like a war drum in her chest. She glanced back once. The apartment, her sanctuary, burned in her mind's eye. The life she had built, the peace she had hoped for, was gone. Cole didn't stop. He pulled her along, urging her to keep pace. And then, as they rounded the corner, Avery saw it. A black SUV screeching to a stop, blocking the alley exit. Armed men poured out, moving with precision and coordination. Her breath hitched, trapped, no way forward. Cole glanced at her, eyes grim. "Get ready." Avery's hand went to the pistol at her side. Every muscle in her body coiled. She had trained for moments like this, but never in a life she wanted to live. The first man raised his gun. Avery West, the quiet chef, made a choice. She would fight. Not for revenge, not for glory. For survival. And for the first time since Cole appeared, she felt alive. The alley smelled of asphalt, smoke, and something metallic, blood perhaps, or the remnants of the microcharge that had nearly destroyed Avery's apartment. Her lungs burned as she ran beside Cole, her pistol tight in her grip. Each breath felt like a betrayal to her body, yet her mind remained razor-sharp, scanning for every possible threat. The black SUV loomed at the end of the alley like a living predator. Its tinted windows reflected the dim streetlights, concealing the faces inside. Armed men spilled out, moving with disciplined precision. Avery's heart pounded against her ribs like it wanted to escape. She didn't know how many there were, but the way they moved, it wasn't a ragtag attack. It was coordinated, professional. Cole glanced at her, voice low but firm. "Keep your head down. Don't engage unless necessary." Avery swallowed hard. She wasn't used to giving orders or taking them, but she obeyed instinctively. Years of training didn't die. They merely lay dormant until called upon. She crouched behind a dumpster, breathing shallowly. Cole did the same, scanning the perimeter. His eyes caught hers for a fleeting second. Something in that glance made her stomach twist, trust, worry, and an unspoken acknowledgement. This was only the beginning. Then the SUV's rear doors opened. A woman stepped out, impeccably dressed, high heels clicking against the concrete. Her hair was tied back in a severe bun, her gaze icy, professional, unyielding. She carried a slim briefcase that somehow radiated danger. Avery's stomach dropped. Government. The woman's eyes locked on her. No introductions, no words of comfort, just a cold stare that measured Avery from head to toe. Then she extended the briefcase, sliding it along the pavement toward Avery. Cole hissed, "Do not touch that." Avery hesitated. Her curiosity battled her instincts. With trembling fingers, she picked up the case, weighing it like a grenade. Her training screamed caution, but the truth inside could be the only chance she had to survive. She opened it carefully. Inside, a single photograph, a dossier, and coordinates. The photo was of the mercenary who had attacked her earlier, bloodied, unconscious. Beneath it was a logo she recognized immediately. A private military conglomerate, covert, ruthless, untouchable. Avery's jaw tightened. They weren't just random assassins. They were part of a network that operated in shadows, tracking, planning, and eliminating threats with surgical precision. The woman's voice cut through the tension. Sharp, controlled, dangerous. "They want you," she said, her eyes boring into Avery's soul. "And they won't stop until you're eliminated." Avery's throat went dry. She could barely breathe. "Why me?" The woman leaned closer, voice dropping to a whisper. "Because you're the only one who can stop what Cole Maddox is planning." Her stomach lurched. Cole planning something catastrophic. Avery's mind raced. She had assumed Cole was here to warn her, perhaps even recruit her, but now she wasn't so sure. Cole shifted slightly beside her, his hand brushing against hers. "Avery," he said softly, but his voice carried a gravity that made her flinch. "You need to trust me." She wanted to, desperately, but years of betrayal and survival instincts screamed caution. She didn't know if she could believe him anymore. Before she could respond, a sharp crack echoed through the alley. Glass shattered. The SUV's windows had been shot out, bullets tearing through the metal with terrifying precision. Avery instinctively dove for cover. Cole yanked her behind a nearby dumpster. Their breaths came fast, heavy, but the moment of calm was fleeting. "A sniper." Her heart lurched. A laser dot flickered across Cole's chest. Her stomach turned to ice. "Cole," she screamed. He ducked instinctively, rolling to the side. The sniper recalibrated, shifting the red dot to Avery's shoulder. She froze. The world slowed. All that existed was the laser, the rifle, the inevitability of death. Avery's mind raced. Training, instinct, reflex. She had been in situations like this before, but never with civilians in the balance, never with someone she cared about directly in the crossfire. She swallowed, heart hammering, and forced herself to move. She sprinted to Cole, dragging him to a wall, using her body as a shield. Bullets splintered concrete and pinged off metal. Dust filled the air, choking, stinging her eyes. Cole gritted his teeth. "Avery, you're the only one who can do this." "Do what?" she yelled over the ringing in her ears. He didn't answer, only thrust the briefcase toward her. Inside were details of the attack, a one-shot plan, a target so high-profile it could topple governments, coordinates, times, execution methods. Avery's mind reeled. The plan, the scope, she couldn't believe it. Cole had been right, this wasn't personal, this was global. She glanced at the sniper's laser again. It flickered, danced across the dumpster, across her arm. Her finger hovered over the trigger of her pistol. Every instinct screamed, "Kill, survive, protect." Cole's voice softened, almost a whisper. "You're the best shot I've ever known. You can stop this." Avery's chest heaved. She hadn't fired a weapon in years, promised herself she never would again. But here now she had no choice. The world depended on her skill, on her one shot. The sniper recalibrated, the red dot sweeping toward Cole again. Time slowed. Avery inhaled deeply, heart steadying. She aligned her pistol, exhaled, and waited for the perfect moment. Then a voice cut through the chaos, sharp, controlled. The government agent in the alley, the one who had handed her the briefcase, shouted, "Move now." Avery didn't. She steadied, drew her breath, and pulled the trigger. The shot rang out. The sniper's rifle toppled from the tree line, clattering against the concrete. Silence followed. Avery's hands trembled as adrenaline surged through her veins. Cole exhaled, chest heaving, relief washing over him. "You did it," he said, voice rough. Avery lowered the pistol, shaking. She felt alive, terrified, exhilarated. The quiet life she had built was gone. She had become something else entirely, a force to be reckoned with. She turned to Cole, voice shaking. "What now?" He reached out, gripping her shoulder. "Now we finish what they started together." Avery swallowed. Fear and determination warred inside her. She had escaped death, she had stopped an assassin, but she knew the war wasn't over, not by a long shot. Sirens wailed in the distance. Reinforcements, mercenaries, government, all converging. She didn't know who would come first. She didn't know who she could trust. All she knew, her quiet life was over. And Avery West, the chef nobody noticed, had just stepped into a world that would test her every skill, every nerve, every instinct. And the night was far from over. The streets were slick from a sudden evening rain, neon reflections rippling across the asphalt as Avery West and Cole Maddox raced through the labyrinth of alleys behind Clayton's roadhouse. Her chest burned, lungs on fire, but she forced herself to keep moving. Every instinct told her to fight, to survive, but adrenaline alone wasn't enough. She had to think, calculate, anticipate. Cole glanced at her, voice low, gravelly from exertion. "They'll be coming for us in minutes. We have to split up to draw them off. You understand?" Avery's stomach dropped. "Split up? Are you insane?" "It's the only way to survive." Her hands gripped the briefcase tighter. Inside, the dossier detailed a plan she didn't fully understand yet, coordinates, schedules, personnel, but it was enough to make her stomach churn. Whoever orchestrated this attack wasn't just after her. They were targeting something larger, something catastrophic. A sharp noise, a car door slamming, echoed in the alley behind them. Avery spun, gun raised. A black sedan peeled out from a side street, tires screeching. Shadowy figures spilled out, guns glinting in the streetlight. Cole grabbed her arm. "Now." They bolted in opposite directions. Avery's heart pounded as she darted through puddles, trying to stay in the shadows. She could hear gunfire behind her, shouts in the rain, tires skidding. Each step pushed her closer to the edge of panic and clarity at the same time. Her mind raced. She had been trained for this, years in the desert, months in operations where every second mattered, every decision could mean life or death. But this wasn't training. This was real. Lives depended on her now, including her own. She ducked into a narrow alley, pressed herself against the wet brick wall, and crouched. Her fingers brushed the pistol at her hip. Sweat and rain slicked her hair to her forehead. She breathed through her nose, slow and controlled, forcing her pulse to steady. Ahead she saw movement, a lone figure approaching cautiously, gun raised. Avery froze. Her first thought, ally or enemy. The figure stepped into the light. Avery's stomach twisted. It was a teenager, maybe 16, eyes wide and terrified, gun trembling in his hands. She recognized the insignia on his jacket, one of the private military conglomerate's symbols. She swallowed. "Hey," she called softly, keeping her hands visible. "It's okay, put the gun down." The boy hesitated, wavering, unsure if she was friend or foe. Avery saw something familiar in his eyes, fear, confusion, a life being dragged into darkness too early. "Don't move," he shouted, voice cracking. Avery's mind raced. She could shoot, neutralize the threat, simple, clean, effective. But he wasn't the one orchestrating this. He was a pawn like she had once been. A choice formed in her mind, a moral line she wasn't sure she had the strength to cross. She stepped slowly, deliberately, hands raised. Listen to me, you don't have to do this. You're better than this. The boy faltered, lowering the gun slightly. Behind her, footsteps echoed reinforcements. She didn't have much time. Her mind calculated quickly, distract, disarm, survive. She lunged forward, using his lowered stance against him, and twisted his arm behind his back. The gun clattered to the ground. Avery's heart pounded as she held him firmly, controlling his movements. "Who sent you?" she demanded, voice firm. The boy's eyes filled with tears. I don't know. They pay us. They told me to follow orders." Avery's jaw tightened. The world she thought she had left behind wasn't gone. It had metastasized, spreading like a virus into the lives of innocents, using them as instruments of chaos. She had a choice now: take the boy out of the equation completely or try to save him. Both carried risk. Both could get her killed. Her fingers shook as she weighed the decision. But then she thought of Cole, of the innocent lives at stake, and the dossier in her backpack, the targets, the larger threat. She made her choice. "Run," she whispered sharply, shoving him toward the nearest side street. "Go, don't look back, and never let them find you again." The boy hesitated, but the urgency in her eyes, the authority she radiated, forced him to obey. He fled, disappearing into the wet night. Avery exhaled sharply, heart still racing, mind still calculating. She turned back to the alley, gun at the ready, only to find a figure emerging from the shadows. Cole. He was bruised, blood running down his arm, but alive. He gave her a brief nod, a silent acknowledgement of her decision. No words were needed. They both understood. Lives were at stake, and moral choices were as dangerous as bullets. "Good work," he said quietly, "but we're not safe yet. They know we're together." Avery's stomach knotted. She had hoped her fight was over, hoped the ambush had been the worst of it. She was wrong. Cole gestured toward a fire escape leading to the rooftops. "We can try to lose them in the rooftops. Fast, high ground, minimal cover. They'll be looking for us on the streets." Avery nodded, following him, pistol at the ready. They scaled the fire escape, metal groaning under their weight. Rain soaked her clothes, hair plastered to her face, but every muscle was alive, every nerve alert. From the rooftop, the city stretched out like a glittering battlefield. Cars, neon lights, pedestrians unaware of the storm above them. Avery's eyes swept the streets below, calculating routes, potential threats, escape paths. She felt the weight of responsibility settle on her shoulders like a physical burden. Every choice she made now, every shot fired, every move, would ripple outward, touching lives she could neither predict nor control. A distant siren wailed, blending with the rain and the occasional gunfire echoing from below. Avery's chest tightened. Time was running out. Cole glanced at her. "We need to move fast. We have to intercept them before they regroup." Avery's hands clenched the pistol tightly. Fear was still there, raw and pulsing, but it had been tempered by purpose. She was no longer just running. She was hunting. As they sprinted across the wet rooftops, the city lights glinting off puddles and metal, Avery realized something she had tried to forget. She had been trained for this life. Every skill, every lesson, every sacrifice, it had all led her here. And now, with Cole beside her, the briefcase of secrets pressing against her back, and the city sprawling below, Avery West understood something terrifying and exhilarating. She was no longer the quiet chef. She was a weapon. And the storm was just beginning. Because the people hunting her were organized, ruthless, and relentless, and she had no choice but to strike first. Rain pummeled the rooftops, slicking every surface and turning Avery West's boots into deadly instruments of calculated balance. The city below was a blur of neon and headlights, unaware that two of its most dangerous inhabitants were navigating its heights like predators. Cole Maddox moved beside her, silent, precise, every muscle taut and ready. The dossier in Avery's backpack burned against her spine, a constant reminder of the stakes. Someone in power intended to use lethal force, and they were already in motion. Avery's pulse throbbed in her temples. She had trained for this scenario years ago, but nothing could have prepared her for the moral complexity now pressing on her chest. Every move could cost lives, her own, Cole's, innocence below. And yet she felt alive, more alive than she had in years. "First target," Cole muttered, scanning the streets below. "Coordinates are here. They've set up a meeting in an abandoned warehouse. We can intercept before it's too late." Avery nodded, adjusting her grip on the pistol. Her thoughts flicked back to the boy she had saved, to the intruders she had neutralized earlier, to the life she had forsaken. There was no going back. The warehouse loomed ahead like a shadowed fortress, shuttered windows and corrugated steel walls reflecting the sporadic lightning above. Avery and Cole approached cautiously, sticking to shadows, scanning the perimeter. Security cameras were visible, some blinking red, others dark, likely sabotaged. Every detail mattered. Cole crouched beside her. Two guards at the front, possibly more inside. "They've got automatic rifles. You ready?" Avery swallowed hard. "Ready." The plan was simple. Take the high ground, disable the perimeter, infiltrate, neutralize the threat before anyone got hurt, or worse. But simplicity was deceptive. They moved like shadows, scaling a side wall to access the roof. Rain plastered Avery's hair to her face, water running down her neck. Every step required concentration, balance, precision. Below, the guards moved in predictable patterns, unaware of the silent hunters above. Avery's hand shook slightly as she raised her pistol, suppressor attached. She inhaled, exhaled, and fired. The first guard dropped silently, neck broken by precision and skill. Cole neutralized the second in a swift motion, using his body weight to topple the man without a sound. Time slowed. Inside the warehouse, shadows shifted. Figures moved with deliberate purpose, more than they had anticipated. Avery felt her stomach tighten. They were prepared. This wasn't just a meeting, it was an operation. Cole whispered, "They've got a secondary team inside. That's your cue." Avery nodded, heart hammering. She moved to the roof's edge, sighting through a small skylight. Inside, the targets were gathered around a table. Blueprints, files, weapons. It was an operational hub. The woman who had handed Avery the briefcase earlier was there, flanked by others. Her stomach dropped. The stakes were higher than she realized. She tapped Cole's shoulder. "We need to disable them quietly. We don't know if hostages are inside." Cole's eyes were sharp. "Agreed. You go left, I'll take right. Signal if it gets messy." Avery slipped through the skylight, landing silently behind a stack of crates. Rainwater splashed her boots, but she ignored it. Her pulse was steady, sight lined up, breathing controlled. A figure turned suddenly, her training kicked in. She moved first, striking with a swift precision that knocked the guard unconscious before he could react. Her mind remained focused, one step, one target at a time. No hesitation. She advanced, shadows concealing her until she reached the table. Documents scattered, briefcases opened. A laptop hummed, connected to a network that could unleash chaos if it fell into the wrong hands. The woman turned, recognizing Avery instantly. "You shouldn't have come," she said, voice icy, controlled. Avery's jaw tightened. "Neither should you." The first shots rang out, automatic rifles from the perimeter. Avery ducked behind the crates, firing with lethal accuracy, picking off threats one by one. Rainwater and concrete debris became her camouflage, every shot calculated. Cole emerged from the other side, disarming and neutralizing attackers with brutal efficiency. Together, they were a storm, moving in synchrony, instincts honed over years of war and betrayal. Avery's mind raced. They weren't just fighting men, they were dismantling a network, stopping a plan that could devastate cities. Every move mattered. One wrong step and innocent lives would be lost. The woman with the briefcase drew a small pistol. Avery's stomach dropped. She raised her weapon, finger steady, and fired. The woman dropped, clutching her shoulder, cursing through gritted teeth. Cole scanned the room. "Laptop," he muttered. Avery sprinted to the table, unplugging it and taking the files. The blueprints were intact, but at least they had prevented immediate disaster. Footsteps rapid, heavy, reinforcements from outside. They were trapped and Avery's stomach twisted. Cole hissed, "Time to move." They sprinted toward a side exit, but the sound of a gun cocking froze them. A figure emerged from the shadows, Cole's former contact, a man Avery recognized instantly. Betrayal written across his face. "Cole," he sneered, "I knew you'd bring her, thought you'd be smarter than that." Cole's eyes narrowed. "You don't know what you're doing." The man smirked, gun trained. "I know exactly what I'm doing, and she's in way over her head." Avery's pulse quickened. The man raised his weapon and instinct took over. She fired. One shot, clean, precise, disarming him, sending the gun skittering across the floor. Cole moved in instantly, taking control. The tension in the warehouse snapped like a wire stretched too far. Silence fell, punctuated only by the rain tapping against the roof. Avery exhaled, chest heaving. The files were secure, the laptop destroyed, the immediate threat neutralized. But she knew, deep down, that this was far from over. Cole looked at her, eyes weary but grateful. "You did good," he said quietly. Avery's hand still shook, adrenaline coursing through her veins. She had survived, neutralized threats, and made life-and-death decisions that would haunt her. But the satisfaction was short-lived. Because in the corner of the warehouse a shadow moved, a figure they hadn't accounted for, silent, watching, waiting. Avery's stomach sank. They weren't done, not by a long shot. And as the rain poured down, masking their presence but also limiting their options, Avery realized the truth she had tried to ignore for so long. The quiet chef, the unremarkable woman nobody noticed, was now a hunted target in a war she hadn't chosen, but one she could not escape. And the final act was approaching, one that would demand every skill, every instinct, and every ounce of courage she had left. The rain fell harder now, hammering the city rooftops with relentless fury. Avery West crouched behind the remnants of an overturned crate, pistol still in her hand, adrenaline surging like molten fire through her veins. The shadowy figure in the corner of the warehouse, the one they hadn't anticipated, was no longer content to watch. It was moving, deliberate, patient, calculating. Cole Maddox's breathing was heavy beside her, every muscle coiled, ready to strike. His eyes scanned the perimeter, but even he knew that this final adversary wasn't predictable, not like the others, not someone they had already neutralized. Avery's heart pounded, not just from fear, but from the weight of the choice she now faced. One shot, one decision could save lives or end them. The files in her backpack held the key to unraveling the conspiracy. The lives of innocents depended on her. The figure stepped forward. Rainwater dripped from a hooded coat, the dim warehouse light reflecting off a suppressed pistol in their hands. Avery's stomach twisted. She knew instinctively this wasn't a mercenary. It wasn't a random assassin. This was someone higher up, someone with authority, resources, and the ability to make the nightmare she had just survived seem like a mere prelude. Cole whispered, "Stay calm, focus, don't hesitate." Avery swallowed hard. Focus. The words were simple, but the execution was anything but. Her hands were steady, her breathing controlled, but inside a storm raged. Fear, rage, determination. She had survived ambushes, betrayals, explosions, and gunfire, but nothing tested her resolve like the choice in front of her now. The figure raised the gun slightly, signaling an imminent shot. Avery's finger hovered over the trigger. Every muscle in her body screamed to act. Time slowed. Memories flooded her, years in desert heat, firefights, betrayals, the boy she had saved, the intruders she had neutralized, the microcharge that had destroyed her apartment. She thought of the chef she once was, of the quiet life she had built and lost. And then she realized the life she wanted didn't matter anymore. Survival did, justice did, and she was the only one who could deliver it. She exhaled sharply, squeezing the trigger. The shot rang out, precise, clean, and true. The figure dropped, disarmed and incapacitated, eyes wide in shock. Avery didn't pause to revel in the victory. She ran, moving swiftly toward Cole, who had already neutralized the remaining threats. The warehouse was silent now, save for the rain hammering against the roof and the heavy breathing of two warriors still alive. Cole exhaled, placing a firm hand on her shoulder. "You did it," he said quietly. Relief and pride mingled in his voice. "You're incredible." Avery shook her head, adrenaline still surging. "We're not done," she said. This goes higher. We stop one wave, another comes." Cole nodded, eyes dark. "I know, but right now we survived, and that counts." They moved quickly, disappearing into the rain-soaked streets. Every shadow could conceal a threat, every alley a trap, but the immediate danger had passed. Avery felt exhaustion crash over her, muscles trembling, heart pounding, but there was also clarity. The fight was far from over, but for the first time she had the upper hand. As they paused in a quiet side street, Cole pulled a small device from his coat. A secure line, encrypted. He tapped a few buttons. "This will alert the right people, government operatives who can contain this. We hand them the evidence and the network you've been fighting." He shook his head. "It ends." Avery's stomach tightened. "And you?" Cole gave her a small, grim smile. "I've stirred enough trouble already. My job not done, but someone has to stay in the shadows. Someone has to keep an eye on them. That's my role. You," he paused, searching her eyes, "you've got a future beyond this." Avery nodded, but the weight of the past and present pressed on her. She had been trained for a life of survival, betrayal, and combat. But now she realized she had a choice. She could continue to run, to hide in shadows, or she could take the skills she had honed and forge a new purpose. A life beyond fear, beyond violence, beyond being unnoticed. She looked at Cole, voice firm. "We finish this together. I'm not letting them get away." Cole's eyes softened, a flicker of pride and relief crossing his features. "I thought you'd say that." The rain began to lighten, the city breathing again, oblivious to the storm that had just passed above it. Avery and Cole moved toward the edge of the rooftops, looking out over the neon-lit streets. The dossier in her backpack was safe. The files were secure. The immediate threats were neutralized. But the larger battle remained. Avery drew a deep breath, the night air sharp and cleansing. She felt a surge of something she hadn't felt in years: control, power, purpose. She wasn't just a survivor anymore. She was a force to be reckoned with. Cole glanced at her, smirking slightly. "Quiet chef, huh? Hardly." Avery allowed herself a small, ironic smile. "Guess the world will notice now." And for the first time in a long time, she felt the weight of her own name, her own choices, and her own destiny. The quiet life was gone, but in its place, a life forged from fire, precision, and courage had emerged. They descended from the rooftops, moving toward the edge of the city where the authorities would take over. Avery's hand still shook slightly, but her mind was clear. She had faced impossible odds, moral dilemmas, and life-or-death decisions, and she had survived. As the first light of dawn began to pierce the rain-soaked skyline, Avery realized something profound. She had been underestimated all her life, unnoticed, quiet, seemingly ordinary. But now she understood the truth. The quiet chef had eliminated threats with precision, outsmarted professionals, saved lives, and changed the course of a deadly conspiracy. And nobody would ever underestimate her again. Cole's voice broke the moment, low and amused. "You know, the first person who called you quiet is going to regret it." Avery allowed herself a laugh, the tension of the night easing slightly, though the weight of what had happened remained. She had survived storms, ambushes, and betrayal, but more importantly, she had claimed her own power. As they walked into the emerging sunlight, the city awakening around them, Avery felt a sense of peace she hadn't known she could possess. Not the quiet, predictable peace she had once sought, but a hard-won, earned peace. A life that mattered. A life she had fought for with every skill she possessed. And somewhere deep inside, she knew this was just the beginning. Because the quiet chef had become a legend in her own right. And the world would never forget the woman who eliminated a threat in one shot.